The University of Florida, the flagship university for the state of Florida, made headlines last week when it completely eliminated its DEI office. Now, this week, the NAACP has said that it is calling on Black college student athletes to reconsider their attendance at these state universities, threatening the university system and Governor DeSantis in the Florida legislature, saying that the removal of this DEI office in Senate Bill 266, which was signed into law last year, threatens the education of minorities. But is that really the case? Welcome to Counterthought. On Monday of this week, it was reported by ESPN that the NAACP has asked Black student athletes in the state of Florida to reconsider their attendance of these colleges and universities in response to the elimination of the DEI office at the University of Florida. Now, the history of this decision by the University of Florida goes back to last year in May, when the Florida legislature sent Senate Bill SB 266 to Governor DeSantis' desk for signing into law. And that bill was signed by DeSantis. And what that law does is that law actually says that it is, quote, prohibits institutions from spending federal or state dollars on discriminatory initiatives such as the so-called Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion DEI programs. Now, DEI has been in the news for quite some time, for a few years, actually. But last year, the Florida legislature and Governor DeSantis passed the law saying that the state of Florida, its colleges and universities, and the University of Florida is the flagship university in the state, to eliminate these programs. So right off the bat, the outrage at the University of Florida is really misplaced. The University of Florida is just in compliance with the law of the state. But those like Emmitt Smith, you may have heard what he had to say, do not believe that that is a good enough excuse. Because Emmitt Smith believes that there should be a protest of sorts, that these Black college student athletes should be on high alert because of what the University of Florida has done, that the University of Florida cannot just wiggle its way out of its responsibility by saying that it is, just remaining in compliance with the law. And Emmitt Smith, you may not know, is a college football Hall of Famer. He is in the University of Florida's Football Ring of Honor. He is also a NFL Hall of Famer. He was the leading rusher in all of NFL history, played for the Dallas Cowboys, won 3 NFL championships. So his voice carries some weight to it. He is a legend in college and in the NFL. And he said, quote, "I am utterly disgusted by UF's decision and the precedent that it sets. Without the DEI department, the job falls to the office of the provost, who already has their hands full to raise money for the university and continue to advance the academic studies and athletic programs. We cannot continue to believe and trust that a team of leaders all made up of the same background will make the right decision when it comes to equality and diversity. History has already proven that is not the case." He continues, "Instead of showing courage and leadership, we continue to fail based on systemic issues, and with this decision, UF has conformed to the political pressures of today's time." So Emmitt Smith is not mincing words in response to his university's decision. Now, one thing I don't really agree with Emmitt's statement is the fact that the belief that there needs to be a DEI office to take something off the plate of the provost. The University of Florida has done a fantastic job in the last 10 to 15 years of elevating the university from a top 20, 25 public school when I was in attendance there. I attended from 2004 to 2008. And the mission there under President Bernie Manchin, was to get Florida to be a top 10 public university. And we accomplished that. And then the next president, Ken Fox, had the goal of getting Florida to a top 5 public university and achieved that. And his term as president ended, I believe, 2 years ago. And now Ben Sasse is the current president of the University of Florida. So Florida, before this DEI program, was already achieving success. And it wasn't because they were sitting here and only admitting white students. And some would even say white and Asian American students. No, they continued to bring in people who deserve to be there on the merits. And sure, there are still scholarships out there that, are awarded, private scholarships that are given to individuals. I received a scholarship from a Gator Club. There are other scholarships through, different companies and different clubs that, support and advocate for minorities to go to college. Like there's no issue with that. But what the Senate bill, this DEI bill, SB 266, that was signed into law in May of last year by Governor DeSantis, it's similar and kind of in step in line with the Supreme Court decision also last year regarding affirmative action. The Supreme Court ruled 6-3 and overturned and eliminated affirmative action when it comes to colleges and universities. The case before them at the time was a case involving University of North Carolina and Harvard, saying that they were unlawfully, because you cannot discriminate based on, religion, ethnicity, race, gender, all of these things. You cannot discriminate based upon that. The country, the government cannot discriminate based upon those things. And it was found in that case that these universities were actually doing so. So the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action, saying like it is time for this to end. And the affirmative action had been in place for decades at the time. And you go back, and Sandra Day O'Connor, when she ruled on, I believe it was a 2003 case, stated that affirmative action really only needed a lifetime of about 25 years from that date. And that 25 years has arrived. And affirmative action had great intentions. Affirmative action was a way to catch Black Americans up for all of the discrimination that they faced for over 100 years. All of that discrimination, all of those setbacks, again, going back to, legitimate racism, putting the thumb on the scale so that they could not get ahead. But this DEI program, and this is not just at the university level, this is also in companies. I come from the corporate world, and I have seen DEI put into place at companies and discussed, and actually in the current job market, witnessing this. DEI is basically a veil to disguise discriminatory hiring practices. Much like affirmative action had good intent, DEI, in its truest form, also has good intentions. You want there to be diversity. You want there to be inclusion. You don't want to exclude people. You want people to feel welcomed. You want diversity. You don't want everyone to look the same. You don't want everyone to think the same. But people have turned it to become a way to, achieve the outcomes, right? Which is equity. And I talked about equity. I believe it was episode 2 of this podcast, somewhere between in the first 5 episodes. Go back and listen. It's an audio only. I talked about equity versus equality. Equality, it means that you have the same opportunity to succeed, which I believe, and I stated in that episode, that I believe in that there should be equality starting with your childhood. Every child should have an equal opportunity at a good education. But equity is about equal outcomes. And you cannot guarantee equal outcomes. Everyone is different. Everyone has different skill sets. Everyone has different drives and desires, different circumstances. You can have twins, right? Twin children who grow up in the same household and have different lives. They're not both going to become, have the same profession. Even just siblings, brother, brother, sister, sister, brother, sister, growing up in the same household are not going to go on and do the same things. So when it comes back to DEI, it is a way to give an advantage, to promote and hire or promote people who fit a certain requirement. That is what DEI is being used for in a lot of cases. And what tickles me, what made me laugh whenever I read the statement from the NAACP stating that, because of this decision by the University of Florida and the law in general by the state of Florida, calling on Black athletes to openly threaten the universities to, withdraw themselves from the universities or to go and play elsewhere, saying that Black athletes are, that the education of Black athletes, that this might be the only way for them to actually receive a higher education. Let me read this to you. Black student athletes should reconsider attending public colleges and universities in Florida, said the NAACP president, Charlie Baker, on Monday, March 11th. Says, quote, "This is not about politics. It's about the protection of our community, the progression of our culture, and most of all, it's about your education and your future." It goes on. While it is our duty to spread awareness and encourage action around these egregious assaults, we also recognize that protest can come at a price. The sad reality is, for many Black student athletes, collegiate sports may be their sole opportunity at achieving the upward mobility necessary to propel them into their rightful places in society. Florida's rampant anti-Black policies are a direct threat to the advancement of our young people and their ability to compete in a global economy. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are paramount to ensuring equitable and effective educational outcomes. The value Black and other college athletes bring to large universities is unmatched. If their institutions are unable to completely invest in those athletes, it's time to take their talents elsewhere. In that last statement, quote, "If these institutions are unable to completely invest in those athletes, it's time to take their talents elsewhere." Now, the argument that the NAACP is making is stating that because for example, this is the response to the University of Florida, that because the University of Florida has eliminated the DEI office, they're making it seem, or want you to believe, that the current Black student athletes at the University of Florida are not going to receive the education that they would have received through that DEI office. Mind you, the DEI office at the University of Florida didn't exist until a few years ago. And the University of Florida has been around since 1853. Black student athletes have been there for decades, right? Decades. We're talking about 60 years or so. And there was never a DEI office going back to 60 years ago. Never a DEI office, yet, these Black student athletes for 60 years, 6 decades, still received a quality education. So they're trying to get it twisted and confuse people, confuse you, confuse me, confuse the Black student athletes, to lead them to believe that they are no longer going to receive the proper counseling for the advancement of their education. Now, in my time at the University of Florida, I worked for the University Athletic Association. That is the separate entity that is in charge of all of the athletics, college athletes at the University of Florida. And do you know what the University Athletic Association has? Tutors. They have tutors, they have counselors. These student athletes, whether you are Black, white, Latino, Asian, whatever, regardless of your race, your nationality, you have access to these resources. Student athletes at the University of Florida, because it is a perennial top 5 athletic program, have more access to resources than your standard college student. But the NAACP wants you to believe that that is not the case. And what's even funnier, and this is really what tickled me, is that to become a student athlete, a college student athlete, you have to receive, you are being awarded, whether it's a scholarship, a partial scholarship, walking on, no scholarship received. You are there and on a team because of merit, because of your skill set. You are not there to check a box. You are there because you have an advanced level of skill to play at the college level. And the University of Florida, as a top 5 perennial, top 5 program in all of college athletics, is not checking a box by giving you a scholarship or saying that you can be a part of a team. So the NAACP is trying to make the Black college student athlete at the University of Florida and other state schools at the University of Florida, where they're also receiving scholarships because of merit and their skill set. They are arguing that because they're trying to confuse you to make it seem as if merit was not being rewarded as to why those Black student athletes are at the school in the first place. And like I just said with the resources, the University of Florida gives more resources to student athletes than your general standard student at the University of Florida. There are a few hundred student athletes at the University of Florida, and there are dozens of counselors and tutors available to them. The ratio, if I had to guess, a ballpark is probably like 1 to 25. There are about 45,000 students at the University of Florida. And there are definitely not 2,000 tutors and advisors on staff at the University of Florida. But the NAACP is trying to get the Black student athletes to threaten the university to pull their skills and ultimately, affect the bottom line, the money, the revenue that these athletic programs bring in, to try to get the university to defy the law for the state and bring back the DEI office. But this is right in line with the NAACP does. You may remember that the NAACP, going back to last year, said that the state of Florida is, quote, unsafe for Black Americans. Unsafe. And you may remember the hilarity of it all, because the NAACP president was living in Tampa at the time. Tampa, if you are unaware, is a major city in the state of Florida. And he's saying, the state of Florida is unsafe for Blacks, that you are not welcomed in the state of Florida, which is a foolishness. They instituted a travel advisory. I have it right here in front of me. I will read it to you. Quote, under its current governor, the state of Florida has engaged in an all-out attack on Black Americans, accurate Black history, voting rights, members of the LGBTQ plus community, immigrants, women's reproductive rights, free speech, while simultaneously embracing a culture of fear, bullying, intimidation by public officials. And then it goes on. Under the leadership of Governor Ron DeSantis, the state of Florida has criminalized protest, restricted the ability of educators to teach African American history, and engaged in a blatant war against diversity and inclusion. Please be advised that Florida is openly hostile toward African Americans, people of color, and LGBTQ plus individuals. Before traveling to Florida, please understand that the state of Florida devalues and marginalizes the contributions of and the challenges faced by African Americans and other minorities. And then it goes on to please be advised, public schools, yada, yada, yada. So this call by the NAACP in response to the University of Florida eliminating the DEI office and saying that in asking the Black student athletes to threaten to leave the university, or if they would be an incoming recruiting class, to not attend the University of Florida or other state schools, is right in line with that travel advisory that the NAACP issued last year, while the president of the NAACP was literally living in Tampa. And I'm sure his reasoning was like, oh, I'll be the one to fall on the sword, right? I'll be the one to stay behind and live over here in beautiful Tampa while the rest of you, flee the state or, don't even want to come here. But this DEI elimination by the state of Florida, again, is similar to affirmative action. It's similar to the affirmative action ruling going back to last year. And the Supreme Court struck down those affirmative action programs in colleges 6-3, but left the door open for race to be considered, but not just because, hey, I'm X race, but in the telling of a story of how your race impacted your upbringing and how you overcame it. There was a door open there. But by a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court eliminated affirmative action. And Chief Justice John Roberts explained that college admission programs can consider race merely to allow an applicant to explain how their race influenced their character in a way that would have a concrete effect on the university. But a student must be treated based on his or her experience as an individual, not on the basis of race. That is what Chief Justice Roberts wrote. DEI, again, has good intentions. It sounds great. Diversity, yes. You want the best outcomes for people. Fairness, sure. Inclusion, not exclude everyone, yes. But it is as well intended as it sounds. It is not being utilized that way. It is not being implemented that way. And this is at universities. This is at companies, especially major corporations. I'm currently going through a job hunting process, and every single application I submit has every job requisition, and then every application has a DEI statement and DEI questions. Most of them also state that they have to ask these questions because of a federal law or mandate. And you're going to have a hard time convincing me, especially because the federal government is involved, that your selections on these applications are not impacting where you are slotted on the rankings for interviews and potential job offers. If you want to know all this information is being utilized, and it's not being utilized just to count and analyze who's applying for what position. There are companies out there who are using DEI and promoting individuals based on their race or their ethnicity or their gender, their sex. So DEI is not being used for good. We need to get back to merits in this country. One of the arguments about eliminating affirmative action, about eliminating DEI, these diversity hires. Remember, we heard about it a lot with Ketanji Brown Jackson. Could also say that was the same thing for Trump's appointment with Amy Coney Barrett, a woman, right? Kamala Harris, woman. Biden said that he was going to do that, have a woman vice president, and went ahead and did it. We need to get back to merit. And one of the arguments against, making a diversity hire, whether it be at the government or a private company, is that you immediately, and Clarence Thomas talks about this, you immediately undercut that individual, saying, oh, they only have that position because of their race, because of their gender, because of their sexuality, their ethnicity. You immediately undercut them. And I wish more people, and maybe it's because of the level that they're being hired at, the power that they have, the clout that they have, that they would not be okay with being hired and having that associated with them of, oh, you were just a diversity hire. I would get sick and tired of hearing that. If someone was like, oh, I'm only going to hire this guy over here, and I had that quality and I was the one that was hired, I would get sick and tired of being told that I only have that position, not because I am capable of that position, not because of what I accomplished to earn that position, but because of something that has completely, absolutely nothing to do with your position, with your accolade. So we as the people, I think, are going to have to start swallowing some pride here and demanding that this treatment, and as much as a company or whomever wants to say, oh, you are the first this, you are the first that. If that's true, great. But me personally, I would not really want something like that attached to me if it's just going to undercut me as in my accomplishment. We need to get back to merits. And again, go back to Clarence Thomas. He talks about, and this has been seen in college admissions, the lowering of standards for different races. We heard about that, especially when it comes to applications and acceptance at Harvard. Asian Americans have to have like the highest SAT, ACT rate ranking score, and then whites and blacks, and it's different for different levels of race. And then as you're admitting people who are scoring lower than what they need to score to actually attend there, you're giving them a little bit of a handicap. And then those individuals struggle at the university is because they were not put in a good situation to succeed. They could have gone to a school that was more suited for their scores and excelled at those schools, and then got a better job and worked their way up through in their career path to still attain the same levels of success. But it is nothing new that the NAACP came out and is, sensationalizing this decision by the University of Florida. And that money is going to be, it is earmarked and is going to be used to do similar things as what the DEI office was doing, but it is not going to be, there is no more DEI office. We as the people need to get back to, and as a country as a whole, get back to rewarding people based upon merit. And will some things seem unfair? Yes. If you analyze statistics about who's being admitted or given certain kind of jobs based on merit alone, is it correlation or causation? Right? I know that discussion is going to exist, and you'll have people who will believe it is causation and people who will believe it is correlation. But I firmly believe that if we go based off of merit, then ultimately in due time, everyone will achieve greater levels of success, not only in today's generation in the workforce, but future generations to come. Hi, I'm Brian Kletter, the creator and host of Counterthought. For more Counterthought content, Watch these 2 videos and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and spread the word.